Welcome to Bookin' It. Today's episode will be The Aeneid, Part 3, Books 5 through 8. Hey everyone, welcome to Bookin' It. I'm, of course, your eloquent host, Cooper Cobbs. Joining me today across from me, Mr. Tanner Lewis.
Howdy.
Over there, the Michigan hat, Isaiah Raetsky.
Hello, hello.
Next to me in the Myrica Under Armour shirt, Mr. Bryson Bostwick.
Hey, everybody.
Well, today's going to be a shorter episode, but we thought we'd check in and do an Aeneid episode today on books 5 through 8. Tanner has our questions and is leading us this week, so Tanner, take it away.
Yay! Okay, let's dive right in. We're talking about three characters in particular in books 7 and 8, and we're talking specifically about these ideas of fate and free will. So these three characters that I'm thinking of right now are Aeneas, Latinus, and Turnus. Okay? Now, who are Latinus and Turnus?
So Latinus is the king of Italy, or the king of Latium, and Turnus is like a suitor for his daughter, right? That Aeneas kind of has to compete with to win Latinus' daughter, so they can kind of unite the kingdoms, you know?
Yeah. And so something that we've been talking about throughout all of our discussions of Greek and Roman literature is this idea of how much power do the gods actually have? Like, what is fate? What is free will in these religious circles? Like, what's their worldview on where this lands? And so kind of it feels a little bit like book 7 and 8, just like the conflict of what happened in these books. Somebody want to mention what happened in here as well?
That's a good question.
Yeah, basically in book 5, they have like funeral games for Aeneas' dad, because big sad, and they're just like borrowed from the Iliad, just like straight up, you know? It's like basically copying scene for scene the Iliad, except with these characters in the Aeneid. In book 6, Aeneas goes down to the dead, sees his pops, gets a prophecy that he likes, comes out a new man, and then it lands in the next book in Italy, announces himself to King Latium. Everybody's happy, and then Juno goes in book 8, nuh-uh, and the Latium and the Trojans start fighting again, and that's where we're at.
I would like to say, though, that Bryson was kind of close when he said about eating their tables. He said bananas. It was a bit wrong. It was super stale bread that they used as a table. So they were super hungry, so they ate the stale bread afterward.
Oh, wow.
Which made him realize, oh, shoot, where we're supposed to be, we're in the place where prophesied to be at.
Yeah. Like, who knew?
So So going back to the question, how did like fate and free will, like where did we kind of land with these specifically? Kind of the topic of Juno nutting, as Cooper said.
Well, so basically the gods have a will, and there. So it seems to me that there is like two concepts. There is like fate and the god's will, and that sometimes the gods can be out of line with fate. It's like Juno is a goddess, but ultimately her wishes go against fate. And so we know Aeneas is going to become, you know, he's going to marry into Latium. He's going to found Rome, you know, down the line. His descendants will. So ultimately, Juno is pointless, right? At the same time, there is this kind of God's will and fate where it can be resisted, but ultimately it's always futile to do so. So like it was pointed out in our guide or reading Heroes of City of Man that Juno is resisting, you know, the will of the gods, resisting fate. She is refusing to submit to pietas, is becoming this embodiment of furor. But at the same time, it's pointless. Like, she started a civil war. Brothers are killing brothers, you know, eventually, right? They're going to be the same people. So rejecting the god's will can happen, but it always results in downfall and evil and never anything good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I like how in all of the Odyssey and even going back to the Iliad, Juno, or Hera, as she is in Greek history, like she's the main one that is making all of this happen. What? She's not?
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I'll just look over at Isaiah, and he's like, no. Yeah, she's the one that's making all of this happen, and kind of feel like she is the main god that just perpetuates all of this strife, all of this disobedience and not wanting to follow what fate has already designed. And she kind of like Aphrodite in in the Iliad. Yeah. She's the main one that's just ruining all the plans of, I guess, Apollo and Juno, and just like she is Juno. of Jupiter. Yeah, just like how much do we actually sympathize with her? Because I know in Odyssey we're kind of supposed to sympathize with her because she's on the side of the Greeks, and now we're kind of getting to look at it from the other side. And I don't know, Cooper, do you kind of? I mean, this is what Cooper the place Cooper was coming from before, just saying that he felt like the Trojans had more of the moral high ground in the Iliad, in that war, in the Trojan War, and now we're finally kind of seeing it from their perspective, and we're getting to look at, oh, wow, like Juno really is stepping out of line here and going against fate, going against what Jupiter had already planned, and what Aeneas is supposed to be doing.
It seems to me the difference is that in the Iliad, we don't want fate to happen because we're kind of like Homer is fairly like unbiased. He is Greek, but he's portraying the Greeks pretty, candidly, and so it's not flattering for them. And we kind of like Hector. We like the Trojans. They seem to be a pretty tightly connected people. And so we don't like when fate has to happen and Achilles has to kill Hector. At the same time here, we are in favor of fate happening because I guess we're all, getting caught along by the Roman propaganda that is the Aeneid. And so we're cheering for Rome to be founded, which we know will happen. And so, yeah, Juno is really annoying in this because in the past she was the unfortunate, angel of death carrying out fate. But now she is the just, rage, furor kind of lady who's messing up with the good future we know is going to happen. So, Isaiah, your thoughts?
I don't really have much on it. Yeah, I don't know. It was a struggle to understand what the heck was going on in the book. I had to reread stuff a lot. Like I had to catch myself reading like a page or two and being like, I have zero clue what just happened. Not a clue.
My mind was wandering so hard while trying to read through this.
Yeah. So I don't. Really
it's
have
my
any
biggest
thoughts
struggle
on it.
as I'm reading these. It's like I'll get like 8 words into something, and my mind will just be utterly gone from this. Be thinking about my thesis or something. It's just like I can't focus.
I know, and I read something, and and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna hit this hard, and I'm gonna be able to.
And then you start reading it.
I know, and then I start actually reading, and like, wow, this is really dragging me down. And there are, like we've already said, there are so many moments when it just, wow, am I really reading something different? This seems like it's the Iliad or it's the Odyssey.
Well, so too, Juno's interaction with and her involvement and her stirring the pot. What are things? What are ways that we see? Can you guys think of any things that you see that because she stirred the pot are there? Like we don't have the real. They didn't really start another Troy in Rome. We don't have. Yeah,
because and Aeneas is kind of thinking that the whole time is I want to rebuild the walls of Troy in a different place. I want to have a new Troy.
What language did they speak in Rome?
I have no idea.
Latin?
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, never mind. We have an idea.
Hear me out. In Latium, they speak Latin.
Whoa.
So there's
Man,
some
I
things
forgot
that
it's called that.
infiltrated because she.
Especially if we sympathized with the Trojans in the Iliad, we kind of do want that vision of Troy to come back and Troy to be standing again to happen. But then also at the same time, we're like, oh, wait, but we know Rome is this huge superpower that's going to later enter the picture. And we know that has to happen. So what else are we supposed to do but to be the heralds of its coming and to just actually accept it and prepare for it. So yeah, like, I don't know, most of this book, I guess I've spent just being like, okay, how is Aeneas going to get one step closer to Rome? How is he going to become just one bit more Italian? Like, how is that finally going to happen? And he just belabors it, doesn't come, he procrastinates. Not really following out his fate or destiny as much as I wish he did.
Yeah. So, going back to the three biggies that we were talking about earlier, Aeneas, Latinus, and Turnus. Okay. let's think about their decisions. I'm stealing this one from Heroes because I don't want to. I was lazy, so I was making these questions. Like, what did their decisions reveal about their kingship? Right, like their leadership. What kind of a leader were each of these three men? There's three of you. I want a response for each one of these, from each one of you talking about these. Isaiah starts so that Cooper and Bryson don't steal.
So, talk about what kind of leader the three were.
Choose one. Talk about their kingship, like what they did, and I'll kind of tie it all back in.
I'm trying. So what, it was Aeneas, Latinus,
and Turnus.
I know, obviously, Latinus is from that, whatever.
Latino,
yeah. But where's Turnus from? I don't remember where he's from.
Somebody.
Is he from Latium? He's a noble in Latium?
He's like a noble or something.
Oh.
But he has some amount of power, from what I remember.
Wasn't Latium the one that responded and basically helped Aeneas in that fight thing that happened? So I just say that, like, he was quick to answer the call to fight. I guess, right? Because didn't they make a bunch of weapons for Aeneas too? And then he was just bold and, I guess, follow the god's will, Charlotte, because they told him, "Hey, go fight."
Wait, hang on.
Or am I thinking?
No,
that's
somebody else.
So basically, Aeneas lands, and then sends envoys to Latium. It's like, "Hey, I'm here. I'm prophesied to, like, basically be king here later." And Latium's like, "Yo, that's so cool. Marry my daughter, man."
Okay, that's okay. I confused it.
And then both Juno and Turnus are like, "Wait a minute." And then so it seems like Juno does her work, and that, like, Latium ends up fighting against.
Okay. Well, it wasn't Latium that started the fight. It was
No, it was not his fault. It was
the farmers
receptive.
or whatever, and then he was kind of like peer pressured into, like, "Hey, fight," by all his people.
Yeah.
So I'd say more of he's just weak, in the sense of
Passive.
not passive. I'd say more like mentally weak, sort of, in the sense of whenever his people started saying, "Hey, we want to fight," instead of, like, siding with Aeneas because that's what he wanted, he was like, "Okay, sure, yeah, you guys go fight," and just gave in to the
He's
crowd.
like Pilate washing his hands in the background.
Yeah, he just kind of gave in to what the people
Someone
wanted.
give me my white cloth so I can wipe the blood off my water off my hands.
Okay, so you two, the other ones sitting across from me. Let's think about the other two.
I'll take Turnus, and then Bryce, you can talk about Aeneas, and maybe talk about his journey from the dead too. So Turnus is like the guy I talked about earlier, who rejects fate and is like wants to go his own hot-headed way, and ends up bringing, like, death upon everybody. So he kind of embodies, rejecting the pie. He's like a foil to Aeneas, right? Right? What are you looking at?
But he wasn't going to be, right?
Okay, well, for the purposes of the podcast. So there were other.
Explain what she just said. So I can hear.
So Massimo basically said, well, he was coerced by other forces, which is partly true, but he bears some responsibility. And insofar as he bears responsibility and made a choice, then it kind of embodies the rejection of Pietas. I mean, obviously there was coercion involved, and Aeneas involves the submission to Pietas. And guess what? Aeneas has future glory. He goes to war fighting for his descendants at the end of Book 8, and Turnus is just fighting for fear and rage and things like that. And so they kind of embody opposite poles, and guess what? Virgil thinks Aeneas is better, and I'm inclined to agree. So.
Oh, yeah. Perfect setup for, speaking of Aeneas, I don't remember as much from later books with him, but just beginning, Aeneas is a whole lot stronger of a character. Like, he even keeps being referred to as Father Aeneas. Which just shows that Virgil has this respect for him, that all the other main characters of the story, at least in the beginning, have a respect for Aeneas because he is a character that they are willing to follow wherever. And even though some of the choices he makes don't make sense to anyone else, they're still willing to follow him, still willing to do what he says. And I think that definitely speaks to his character, just the type of leadership skills that he had, and just the ability to hopefully not coerce, but have other men willing to follow him wherever he went. And so then Journey Down to the Dead, I don't know if y'all can help me on this one.
Can I add one thing?
Yes.
I think that we see Aeneas carry the past. Like, he carries the past. He's bringing all of the Trojan history and past with him, and then he's also pursuing the future. So we see his leadership of
Yeah,
both carrying the
because
past
you
and
do
then
constantly
pursuing the
hear him
future.
reminiscing and just thinking over the stories of the past and what has led him here. All the pain, the sorrow, and huge vision for the future at the same time. He's not given up on the hope of the Trojans, of their one day having a great civilization. So definitely pursuing a goal and has foresight, has a vision. Definitely someone that can be respected, but also has his moments where he needs to be corrected by the gods, by other men. Yeah, just like any of us.
Yeah. Okay. So, as I promised, I will wrap up and tie all three of these together. Essentially, what we're thinking here is we have Aeneas, we have Latinus, and we have Turnus. Latinus is, in the words of Isaiah, a weak cowardice, or no, more like
Somewhat what I said, but not fully.
more peer pressured.
Yeah,
kind of where you're
easily
leaning toward.
peer pressured easily falls into what the crowd is.
More of a I'm gonna be a cow and just follow the herd.
Sheep and follow the herd, but sure.
Either way, it doesn't matter. I'm brain dead right now, if you can't tell. Anyways, so that's what we've kind of decided about Latinus. We've got Turnus, who seemed to just be a little bit of a hothead, but not entirely. Cooper's going to correct me and say,
Well, I mean, with the asterisk of like coerced,
yeah,
but also hothead.
Yeah, coerced hothead.
I mean, something gives me the impression that he was kind of happy to, at least somewhat,
Exactly. And so, and then we have Aeneas, who is continuing to be the person in the right, is what it seems to be. So we have these three characters, and I think the natural response that we've gotten from these books that we've read so far is that Aeneas is somebody who we don't necessarily want to imitate in all ways, but in the fact that he is not a coward, and he also thinks for himself, is something that ought to be admired, right? He doesn't just take fate or allow himself to be, peer pressured into certain things. So that's all the thoughts that we have for today.
Yeah, I mean, I think this section is hard to follow, but also some cool stuff here with just Aeneas looking forward to Rome, fighting without on his back, and also all the Homer allusions.
Exactly.
And just honestly, I am seeing more and more remnants and dark mirrors of Christ eventually, death to life, going to dead, coming out a new person, that kind of thing, and fighting with hope forward in our hands, the Book of Revelation, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Even though it's pagan, I'm still seeing kind of the remnants and shadows and types of Christ here. So it's been fun to track, and I think that it's had some helpful handles on how to understand some things, even though it's kind of hard to track sometimes. So.
Exactly. So sorry that this is a short episode, guys. This got shoved to the very end of our school day. For once, we're all a little bit antsy to get up out of our seats and leave, maybe move around a little bit.
Jump around.
Exactly. And so if you love this podcast, we have a couple of amazing things. Firstly, we have our website, which has a newsletter that you guys can go to. It's just going to be 412podcasting.com. And if you want to go to that newsletter, it's going to be /newsletter. And then we also, if you love this podcast, we are listener supported. And Cooper's going to talk about that right now.
Exactly. You can go to patreon.com/bookinit. Check out our cool levels there and awesome benefits you can get for supporting us. I mean, they're just byproducts of doing what you are supposed to do and just, support us. So, I mean, that's not supposed to do.
Exactly.
So.
None of this is going back into our own pockets. This is a hobby.
Exactly. You make this happen.
Yeah, you
and
guys.
My microphone may have just broken, so you might support us getting a new one there. Okay.
Honestly, so support us. Pay for Cooper's new microphone. With that in mind, if you do give us $5 or more on Patreon, we will now be shouting you out. I'm pulling them up right now real fast.
Say them in a funny voice, everybody.
Exactly. I'll say the name, and you guys can say them funnily. So, Nana.
No.
Van Pappy and Wayla. Isaiah's grandparents.
My grandparents.
Mike and Sylvia.
Moses and Zara.
Moses and Zara.
And Jenny and Uncle Sam.
And Judy and Uncle Sam.
Mr. Mike and Miss Laura.
My parents, Mr. Mike and Miss Laura.
Anna.
Anna.
Emily.
Emily.
Keenan. Keenan. I said that wrong. Howdy.
Howdy.
Miss Jenny.
Miss Jenny.
Mrs. Hall.
Miss Hall.
Will.
William.
And Kara.
Kara.
Thank you guys so much for supporting us. And I hope that you guys all enjoyed this episode. And until next time,
Keep on booking it.